Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection podcast with me, Robbie Lee.
And me, Philippa Robinson.
This is where we share our stories, our insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
So, the first 10 episodes of this podcast are conversations that Robbie and I first had over on my solo podcast, Meeting of Minds. We've listened back to those conversations and we thought that they were really valuable, so that we've brought them over here to our new HSP Connection podcast for you to listen to. Whilst you're busy catching up on these, we'll be creating a whole raft of new podcasts for you to listen to. And before we get on to the conversation, the first one that we're bringing you today is all around the trait of high sensitivity. And we dive into the 5 main characteristics of the trait that Elaine Aron discovered in her research back in the 1990s. But before we actually do that, we're just going to have a little chat between us and just share with you our reflections on that episode, having listened back. So, Robbie, what would you like to kick us off? Kick us off with your first reflection of listening back. How was it listening back for you?
It was a trip listening to myself, first of all, and seeing myself on video. It was a mixed bag, to be honest. So there was the part of me that was looking at all the imperfections, right? My perfectionist brain was really zeroing in on all of those things. But then the conversation felt so good. Like, I really enjoyed when we recorded it. I enjoyed being in the conversation, and I enjoyed hearing it again because it jazzed me up all over again. And so that was really fun to notice. And it's just so interesting how, our brains can pick at things, which really in the big term, the long term, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I said, or that my lighting wasn't perfect, or, the other million things that my perfectionist brain wanted to point out. Like, the core of the conversation was really great. And it was fun to do it with you. How about you?
Yeah, I because we ummed and ahed, didn't we, about whether to whether to release these episodes again. And I know some of you, hopefully some of you here will have listened to them before over on the Meeting of Minds, and that's great. And feel free to just not listen to these first episodes. But for those who haven't listened, they are actually really great, in-depth, but quite fun conversations. And I've been enjoying listening back to them, like you have. But also, actually, I did 100 episodes of Meeting of Minds. I'm used to listening back to
right.
You're not quite so used to it, are you? So I can imagine. I remember those early days of like picking out over everything that I'd said wrong or stumbled over my words, or I always think I speak too quickly. And the first few episodes of the Meeting of Minds, I really do speak quickly. So this is me now trying to really slow down. And I always reckon if I can listen on 1.2 speed and still understand me, I'm doing okay. That's my benchmark for how much I've slowed down, which is really funny. But the conversation was really great. And, Elaine Aron's research, as we talk about in that episode, is a little bit hard to read sometimes. It's a little bit dry, her book, but it was written for academics, and really amazing research, an amazing book, because it really, we wouldn't be here having connected and be doing this podcast and talking about it if she hadn't done that research. So, but what really came out was the conversation between us and our connection and our take on it, really.
Yeah. And it's funny that you talk about, you're concerned about talking too fast, because I hear myself and say, oh my gosh, spit it out already, talk faster. So, and again, we share this with you listeners because it's one of the things we value as women especially, but people putting themselves out in the world, however they are.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a perfect talking speed in order to share your thoughts. Just do it.
Yeah.
If there's something inside you, just do it.
Yeah. And most of the time we turn up unscripted because we want to talk, we want to speak from our heart. And it's really important. And it does mean that sometimes we have to have a little bit of a while we think about what to say next, because it really is happening in the moment. The conversation is really happening in the moment, and as it unfolds, and we have a rough idea of where it's going to go. And in fact, we talked about what we might talk about in these reflections now, and we're now talking about none of the things we said then. Lots of so here we are, and like you say, turning up perfect in our imperfections. You are a recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering people pleaser. Perfectionism or recovering from perfectionism is absolutely your bag. So we're living your work, aren't we?
We sure are.
We sure are. And anybody who listened to the Meeting of Minds will know that I say actually all the time. So my aim for this is to say actually less. So, might have to keep a bingo record of how many times I say actually. So I had two main takeaways, or main points that really stood out for me when I listened back to the episode. And the first one was when, we were talking about how we discovered high sensitivity and how it applied to us. And we sort of both came to it not that long ago, and through a health issue of very different, but something went on with our bodies that brought us to a place where we learned about high sensitivity. And we were talking about that realization. And you said that when you discovered high sensitivity, you first of all found it as a label for what was wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then went on to say, that's not how you think about it now.
That's right.
It's not a label for what is wrong with you. It's a label for what is wonderful about you.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about myself now that I really understand the trait and embrace it. But I absolutely at first was like, here's the label for what's wrong with me. How do I fix it? And I think some of my clients come to me in that state too. It's just like, well, I want to learn how to be less sensitive. I'm like, well, you found the wrong coach, because I'm not going to teach you how to be less sensitive, because that's impossible.
Yeah.
But I am going to teach you why it's amazing to be sensitive, and how you can utilize your sensitivity, and how you can do things to give your system what it needs so that it's not so painful to be sensitive.
Yeah. And how to thrive, how to be highly sensitive, enjoy all the gifts that come with it, and thrive.
Yes.
Rather than feeling like it's something that needs fixing.
That's right.
Yeah. Because I didn't really have that experience, because I came to discover I was highly sensitive on the back of recovering from my childhood trauma, and having learned lots of things I'd already gone through on the back of the trauma, learning how to calm my nervous system and keep my nervous system regulated. So I was in a really good place. So yes, my high sensitivity probably heightened my experience of the trauma, but to then discover I needed the things I needed to help me thrive as an HSP, I'd already learned a lot of them. So it wasn't quite such a big thing. I'd been through a massive big thing, but it wasn't quite such a big thing to add on top. It was more okay, it made more sense. It was another layer of finding out about myself and helping me make sense of things. So actually, I really loved understanding that.
It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Age helps though as well, I think.
Age, perspective, time, experiences.
Reaching 50 and thinking, actually, I don't give a stuff anymore. I am who I am, you know, and who I am needs no explaining, as the song goes. So yeah. The other thing I really loved in that episode is where we talk about how wonderful it is being an HSP, but also we're not saying that HSPs are better than non-HSPs.
I mean, you keep saying that, but no.
But what we are saying is they're not worse, because I think a lot of highly sensitive people can feel that they are not as good as people who are less sensitive. And
it's absolutely the message we get. Yeah.
But actually, we're just different.
We're different and amazing.
We are different. We are amazing. And we are absolutely here for a reason. You know,
yes.
Nature does not make mistakes. And high sensitivity as a trait is seen in, forgetting the stats.
Hundreds.
130 or something like that. Species
over 100 animals.
Yeah. It's not a mistake. It's here for a reason. And we will we talk about some of those reasons in the episodes we've already recorded. We will go on to talk about those more in other episodes. So did you have anything else?
Well, I think if we keep going on, they're never going to get to the episode. I think you've done.
Are you saying shut up now? And
no,
I think you are.
I'm saying that every time you and I get together, we could talk for an eternity, because we love this topic so very much. I think you did a beautiful job of summarizing, and I'm excited for people to hear it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to shut up now and we're going to let you listen to the whole episode, and we hope you enjoy it. What we're going to do today, we've decided, haven't we?
We have. We're
going to talk about what is a HSP, what is a highly sensitive person, what does it all mean, what does it mean for us? Yeah, because you know, I originally thought, oh, well, we'll just introduce ourselves. But then, of course, really, you're not here to listening to know more about us. We'll tell you more along the way. But, you know, let's throw it wide open and start, you know, with the basics. What is HSP? And you're going to, are you going to be able to run us through a little bit of that, Robbie?
I can try.
You can try. Well, let's see.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I heard about HSP was several years ago. I got a hold of Dr. Elaine Aron's book, which was The Highly Sensitive Person. She wrote it in the 90s, right? And so she did a lot of work on sensory processing sensitivity. She discovered this was a thing, and she created... You've got it.
I knew it was here somewhere. I was just looking on my bookshelf. So there it is. It's probably backwards on the camera, but The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron. Yes.
Yep. And so she has a little test in her book that you can take to see if you are a highly sensitive person. I took that test. I'm like, yes, I am. But what it meant for me was, I don't know. It's kind of like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I didn't really understand what it meant, honestly. And I'm super grateful for her research, because she started the ball rolling for us. But she said, hey, our brains are wired differently. We process things differently. We have more empathy. We can get overwhelmed by stimulus. Those types of things. And I read that and I was like, I mean, kind of, but I also wasn't totally connecting. I don't know if you had a similar experience when you...
Yeah, I can't, I think, how did I didn't read the book for quite a while. I'd already heard about HSP. I think I know what it was. I have lots of podcasts that I love a podcast, and I listen to loads of them. And one that I regularly listen to, Julie Beeland was a guest on.
And I actually, before that, I was doing a counselling foundation course for a year back in 2017. And on that course, there was a woman who was always eating in the middle of, she's always snacking on some nuts or something in the middle of what we were doing. And she used to keep saying, oh, I'm very highly sensitive, so I need to eat a lot. So if I'm really honest, I just thought that was a little bit affected.
I was just going to say you were judging her a bit, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah.
I absolutely was. And whether she meant she was an HSP, I don't know. But she said, I'm very sensitive and us sensitives need to eat. And I was thinking, oh, maybe that's why that's how I got to how I am. But so that was the only time I'd ever really come across people owning their sensitivity, actually.
Yeah.
And she quite openly was saying she was highly sensitive. So fast forward a little bit. And Julie Beeland was a guest on this podcast. And then I found Julie's podcast and I was listening to a lot of Julie's episodes. And the more she talked about high sensitivity, the more she talked about how it is to be highly sensitive, the more I really began to recognize that this was me. I didn't jump for joy, but I also didn't crawl away and hide either. It was very much, this is interesting. But I didn't really come from having been shamed throughout my life for being sensitive, because I think I hid my sensitivity really early on. So it was all a revelation to me after I'd finished my therapy and sort of taken that top layer of sort of trauma off. The next thing I discovered was underneath it all, there was this highly sensitive person. What?
Oh.
Yeah. And it really helped answer my question at the time that was going through my head. It's like, okay, so who am I now? Now I'm not driven by all this trauma. Who am I? So, and then, so I listened to that more and more and more. And Willow was then a guest, and then I came across Willow, and we've talked about Willow in your episode. We'll talk about Willow. We'll talk about Julie, I'm sure, more during the course of this podcast. And then I got the book. So I got the book after I'd already knew something, and I'd already probably decided I was probably HSP, because I'd done the test on Julie's, I'd done the test on Willow's, which, I mean, they're very similar. And, I was scoring nearly full, I tick, 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 tick. I was nearly all of them.
Yeah.
And so, I think it was quite clear to me at that stage that I was indeed sensitive. And I remember I sent a text to friends of mine saying, okay, I've got something to tell you. And they were on my counselling foundation course with me, so they kind of understood. I said, I've got something to tell you. It's really important. I want you to know that I'm highly sensitive. And I remember sitting on my bed, pressing send and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to admit it. I'm going to tell them I'm highly sensitive. Oh, this is such a big moment for me. Nothing. Nothing for days.
Just no response at all?
No response.
Oh, my goodness.
And then when I went, hi, everybody okay? Because we're in a WhatsApp group. Hi, everybody okay? Did anybody read my message? And they went, oh yeah. Like they didn't realize that it was like, it was a really, really big deal for me. I mean, had they realized, they probably would have reacted more. But so that was my introduction to sort of owning my HSP
penis.
No, you told me off for doing that before. My HSPness. Now I can't say it without the essence of being an HSP. So sorry, coming back to the book. So by the time I read the book, and like the subtitle is How to Thrive When the World Overwhelms You.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure that's very well meaning, but I found this book quite hard going, and it didn't really connect with. I didn't feel a connection with it, like I'd felt a connection with the things that Julie talks about and the things that Willow talks about. So, and I think that's largely because this book is 30 years old.
Right.
She was an academic. She was investigating sensory processing sensitivity. not disorder, not to be confused with the disorder, sensory processing sensitivity. And, you know, from that, she came up with this sort of tagline, the highly sensitive person. And it's sort of gone on from there, really. And I think Julie and Willow, in their different ways, are taking it to a different level.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Because in here, it feels like it's a problem, like it's, you know, what did I say? I think I call it dirge
like
earlier. Well, it just, I don't know, and maybe it's the language of the 90s, I don't know, but I really didn't connect with that. Whereas when, you know, you hear Julie explaining how to meet your needs as a sensitive person and how to thrive as a sensitive person, I mean, that really resonates. When you hear Willow talk about your gifts as a highly sensitive person and the gifts you bring to the world, and how we need highly sensitive people to be leaders and to use all those gifts to lead the, you know, to lead us to a better place. You know, that's what resonates with me more so than that book. So
yes, 100%.
That's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Beautiful answer. Yes. So we came upon the book at different stages. The book was my very first introduction to anything about it.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, you know, and I totally know what you're saying about it. It's definitely academic. And I think she was trying to write it for the academic community, saying, hey, there's this thing that we haven't identified before, and it is separate from these other disorders. Like, this is a thing, this is an inherent trait that some humans have, and we need to research it more, you know? So it wasn't life-shattering when I first read that book. You know, I was kind of like, oh, okay. But really didn't know what to do with it, you know? And then after I had my, you know, traumatic health challenges, and I started trying to research more about, okay, how do I tick and what do I need and how can I thrive? Then I remembered, I'm like, there's this highly sensitive thing that I keep testing off the charts for, you know? And at that point, I think my frame of reference was, oh, that's the label for the thing that's wrong with me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I can,
because you know, this is why I get overwhelmed. This is why I need more things at work than other people. I need more breaks. I can't handle so much peopling as my wife, you know, like, this is what's wrong with me.
Yes.
But then as I started going to counseling, and then I found the Highly Sensitive Refuge blog. And in that blog, Julie Bjelland had written something. And so I found her site, and then she had these classes. So I took some of those classes, it's really all about how to give your system what you need and how to, so that you can truly regulate your system. She talks about HSPs kind of being like orchids, which they need really specific things in order to thrive. But then when they thrive, they're this beautiful, unique thing. And that, plus my counseling, self-compassion, then I started going, oh, this isn't just a label of what's wrong with me. Like, if I can give my system what it needs, there's these magical powers I have that other people don't have. You know, I can, you know, bring really good stuff to the world. And then from Julie, I found Willow. And his work is just amazing. Yeah,
it's really, and you make a really important point there, that I think sensitivity is usually used in a negative sort of way, especially when we're children. You know, oh, you know, don't be so sensitive, or oh, you know, like the lady I interviewed the other week, and she was saying, you know, she knew she was sensitive, and all her family, they said, oh, that's just Jen, she's sensitive. And it's almost like it is a bit of a disadvantage, because it's not fitting that like mold, or that sort of, you know, we're a bit different.
Yeah.
But then actually, lots of people are different. We're all,
Oh
we're
my
all
gosh.
individuals, aren't we?
Yes.
We're our own, we're all our own beautiful, unique selves, but we try to fit ourselves into boxes.
Yep.
Partly because that feels the safest thing to do sometimes. Partly because we're forced into them sometimes, by families, by organizations, by whatever, whatever our life, whatever those things are in our life can force us into a box. And I looking back, I definitely felt a lot of times that I couldn't do life as well as other people could.
Yes.
But I had no idea that had anything to do with sensitivity.
Yes.
But that's what
there was something wrong.
But I did. Yes, I did. I absolutely did. And I felt broken, and I felt not worthy, and I just wasn't getting life as much as everybody else did. But I put all that down to, I didn't then realize what I'd experienced was trauma, but I put it all down to the way I'd been conditioned at home, which was full of trauma. So I didn't realize so when the trauma was lifted, it sort of gave space, for this other part of me to actually really breathe. So I did know that I was different, but I just took that as a sign that I was broken. And I also hid it very well.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time and energy hiding the fact that I found life so hard. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't let on. Nobody knew. I just tried to do all these things and then wondered why I was like perpetually shattered and just not, I don't know, the ultimate push through. And anyway, I mean, sorry, I'm not all about me, but it's just, that's my experience.
Yes.
Which is different to yours.
And sadly, I think neither of our experiences are unique. I think there are, so many folks out there who have had something similar.
Yes.
To either one of us.
Yeah, you're right. Also, I suppose for me, when I discovered that I was HSP, I'd already been through 3 years of therapy, and I'd already done an awful lot of working out that my nervous system was constantly on high alert and was constantly I was on the edge all the time. So I'd already, as part of my healing from my trauma, worked out how to calm my nervous system. And the things that really worked for me. So by the time I discovered I was an HSP, I kind of I was already in that place.
Yeah. You had already learned some tools, then you learned the label afterward.
Yes. And whereas for you, I know you needed to learn the tools that helped you thrive as an HSP because you were sort of forced there because of your health condition.
Yeah.
Well, I was forced there because of losing the sight in my eye. So we were all forced there one way or another, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, if our system doesn't get what it needs, things start breaking down, things happen.
Yeah. And actually that actually applies to everybody. It doesn't just apply to HSPs. Right. I think we start to see the signs of it a little bit earlier. Because our bodies are that bit more sensitive to these things. But I mean, that applies to everybody, doesn't it?
Yes.
So everything that we're talking about in these episodes, I can't remember if I said that in the intro or not, but everything we're talking about actually is going to apply to everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just HSPs.
That's right. The things that make the world better for HSPs will make the world better for everyone.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. And they're quite anti-establishment, aren't they? They're quite anti.
Yes, they are.
Anti where the world is at now, really. So and that's what we're going to need to do to thrive. So have you got a list, am I right, of like the innate sort of the the way of breaking the trait down that Elaine Aron came up with, because we just want to unpick this a little bit, don't we?
Yeah. Here's what Elaine said, the kind of 5 things. One is depth of processing. So we take in more information than non-HSPs, a lot more. Because of that, we are more easily overstimulated.
Yeah.
Because we're processing more things.
Yeah.
We have emotional responsiveness. So we feel things very deeply, high highs and low lows. Like we just feel things in a very big way. We have acute awareness of stimulations. So that's where we can, I think we talked on my episode where lights can be too bright, or, you know, for me, it can be smells. It can be the texture of something, like I'm wearing something really soft and cozy, like the way my clothes feel really matters to me. So any of those stimulations, like we're very aware of them. We're very conscious of them. And the 5th one is empathy. Like we are very empathic. We have large amounts of empathy for folks.
So when you just read them off as a list, although actually the way you're reading them is making them sound a bit more positive, but when you just read them off as a list, they can sound really, really like big and grey and like, oh God, who would want that? Can't they?
Yes,
and when you read that list out to me just before we started recording, I was like, oh my God, that's like... Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I first heard it, depth of processing, easy overstimulation, emotional responsiveness, acute awareness of stimulations, empathy. I'm like, well, empathy seems good, but the rest of those,
the rest I can leave.
I could leave that. Yeah.
But actually, when you look at them in a little bit more in real life, actually, there are things that we totally understand and things that we're doing. So you know, the taking, is it like 10 I think it's 10 times more data, is it 10 or 100? We take in a lot more data than the non-HSPs do. So an HSP in a room will be, you know, without thinking, they'll be scanning the room, they'll be working out the way people are standing, the way people are moving, the way they're talking with each other, what's happening with their eyes, what's happening with their mouth, what's happening with their hands, it's just somebody look as though they might be a little bit too hot, does somebody look like they might be a little too cold, does somebody look like they need somebody to go and speak to them, does somebody need to sit down, does somebody want to drink, you know, all this is those two look like they've just had an argument, those two look like they want something else, you know. Exactly. Have you noticed? And that one over there is pregnant. I've picked up so many people who are pregnant at work, but anyway, that's all beside the point. So but we're just picking up all those nuances, those little details that are giving us information.
That's right.
And I mean, I've always known I've done that. What I didn't know is that not everybody can do that. Not everybody does that. It's not like I go, I've chosen to do this. I just do it.
That's right.
Which, you know, made me a very annoying child, because I could sense of all the stuff that was going on at home. So I would go, well, what's going on? You know, so
you would notice things.
I did notice, I could feel it.
Yes.
I wanted answers. So I was constantly asking those questions that my parents would have preferred me not to be, because they were hoping nobody was noticing.
Yes.
But you know, now in reality, now, you know, I can, I don't know, like, you know, for instance, I can, you know, when my kids walk in from school, I can just sense, you know, what do they need? Do they want something to eat? Do they want something to drink? Do they want a hug? Do they just want me to leave them alone, you know? And and I know a lot of parents can do that, but I feel I can do that on a really deep, it's like I'm reading something in them.
Yes.
There's a connection, and it's sort of like and sometimes without even saying anything, I can feel like I have that connection.
Yes.
So, and that's actually bloody marvelous. I wouldn't want to not have that.
Right.
So yes, we take in more data. Yes, we're processing all the time. So actually, yeah, we can get more tired with it, and we need to make sure we're getting breaks and all those things. But actually, the joy that comes from taking in all that data and what we realize from all that data, I would not want to be without.
Me neither. Yeah, I would feel lost, honestly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know how to navigate the world.
No, I don't think I would, because I really rely on that like little spidey sense to help me work out, am I safe in it? A lot of the time,
That's
am
right.
I safe in this environment?
That's
Or
right.
do I just need to be a bit careful here? Or what can I give here? And what do I need to keep back? You know, it really does. Yeah, it's like you say, I wouldn't want to be without that. No. Yeah. Well, I've always had it. I just didn't realize what it was.
Which is so common for HSPs, right?
Yes.
We walk around the world doing this because it's how we're wired. We don't realize, until it's really pointed out to us, we don't realize that non-HSPs don't see the world this way, and that because of that, like, we have something additional we can offer, because we are picking up things that non-HSPs don't notice.
Yes.
So we have more information to share, and we're able to connect differently.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember when I started coaching, I've only ever coached on Zoom, because that's when I started, when we were in the middle of the pandemic. And people have said to me, clients have said to me, I don't know how you do this over Zoom. I don't know how we managed to form such a great connection over Zoom. I've never experienced anything like that before. And when a few clients had said that, I thought, oh, there's something going on here.
Yes.
And that's my HSP ness.
Yes,
coming,
it is.
coming in. It really,
yeah.
It's the essence of my HSP trait that enables me to do that. I mean, I prefer it in real life, don't get me wrong, but equally, I could only then work with people in my locality. So, and yeah, it feels to me like a gift.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and like you said, you wouldn't want to be without it.
I really wouldn't know how to navigate. And now that I know much better how to regulate my system,
yes,
then I'm able to appreciate these gifts and use these gifts.
Yes.
What was true for me before is I was in a state of overstimulation for years. And so it was just like I felt like I was a drowning person, and I would every so often, like, my nose would poke up out of the water. I'd take a breath, and then I'd be flailing about again, and so it's hard to then recognize any gifts when you're in that mode. But when you can learn to regulate your system, then you can enjoy the gifts that are on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very, I mean, it's exactly the same nervous system state as being in a trauma response. So, you know, who knows now whether actually me being there was, how much of it was trauma and how much of it was HSP, but it was quite a concoction for quite a long time. And, you know, also, as another lady that I interviewed recently was saying that, you know, because we feel things so much deeper, which is like point 2 on there, we do feel them more deeply. We have this real rich inner life where we're really in connection with our feelings. And, you know, that's why we are very easily brought to tears by music, by art, by, I don't know, just a beautiful summer's day, or a beautiful winter's day, you know, whichever season takes your fancy. And, you know, because we have that, we're feeling things really deeply. And
I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Hello.
All right. So we're feeling things really deeply. And actually, if we are HSPs experiencing trauma, we are actually more likely to be feeling that trauma more deeply than a non-HSP experiencing the same trauma. And that just goes to show that everybody's reaction to trauma is different. You know, everyone's story is different. And actually, you know, we're not saying none of this is about HSPs are better than non-HSPs.
Well, no.
But you know, we are 20%, 30% between that, you know, of the population. There are a lot more non-HSPs than there are HSPs. It's all about raising awareness that the percentage that we fall in, there are less of us, but we're not weak. We're not so sensitive that we can't be leaders, that we can't be at the forefront of advances in all areas of life, that we can't use our voices and be heard. You know, because we're not all sitting in the corner being very quiet. Some of us may well be, just like some non-HSPs may well be, prefer to be quietly on their own. You know, but actually, no, we're very definitely HSPs, and we want to be here putting our voices out in the world. And we've created this safe space for us to do that. Absolutely.
You know, you're right. We're not better. We're not trying to say that we're better. We're also saying that we're not worse, right? We're an important part of the fabric, right? We're an important part of the fabric of humanity, that we bring things to the table that non-HSPs don't, and they bring things to the table that we don't. But we're an important piece, you know, and that one of the things in studying the trait, like it shows up in hundreds of other animal species. Like, so this is something that nature has said, hey, these traits are important. So yeah, we're an important piece. We're an important piece.
And Willow, when Willow talks about that, he always says, you know, it's not an accident. You know, we are meant to be here because of the gifts that we bring, because of the differences that we bring. You know, like we're deeply intuitive, and we have a great connection with our intuition, and we know how to listen to it, we know how to follow it. We don't push it to one side and do what everybody else is telling us to do. We actually listen to our intuition because there is a reason that our intuition is telling us to do that. And like you said, you know, I remember when I was on my counselling foundation course, it was all about the core skills of people-centered counselling, and it was all about empathy, unconditional positive regard, and congruence. And I got what congruence was. I wasn't being congruent at the time, but I understood the idea of, like, you know, those two marrying up. I got unconditional positive regard. Empathy, I'm like, oh my God, what's this empathy thing? I don't know what it is. Oh God, I was reading about it. I was thinking, oh God, I just don't know what it is. And then I was like, oh, it's that. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. That's actually not a problem. And because, you know, my, you know, starting point is always like, oh, well, you know, I'm no good at this. So, you know, what is it? And I just assumed that for some reason it was so, I don't know, such a big thing, and I just didn't understand it, and this was going to be a massive problem. But it turned out actually that empathy comes really quite easily. And you know, so the whole point of sensitivity is that there's a scale for everything. 100%. And you know, all HSPs are sort of, you know, have got certain traits, and then as you go higher up the scale, you know, or this is where the way Julie talks about it, some people talk about empaths and HSPs being very different. You can be both, but you could be an empath without being an HSP, or you could be an HSP without being an empath. So I think that's still a little bit confusing, and I don't think there's one school of thought around that yet, as far as I can see.
You're right.
What would you say about being, so all HSPs are capable of experiencing and giving and being empathic. So that's one side of empathy. The other is being an empath. So I think there's a little bit of different language used by different people around this, and I am not professing to say I understand all of it. I really am not. But I hear people say I'm an empath, and most people who say they are empaths, it means that they feel other people's feelings. And I think that's a great challenge. It must be at times. And I think it's very hard sometimes to work out, okay, I'm feeling this, but is it me that's feeling it, or am I feeling it from somebody I'm with? Am I feeling it from the collective? Where is it coming from? But actually, you can feel feelings really strongly. And if they're not yours, that must be really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, I'm definitely not really high on the empath scale. What about you? What do you think?
I'm very high on the empath scale.
Are you?
Yeah. So that thing that you were just describing absolutely is my experience. So I will feel something, and for most of my life, I just thought I was just feeling something. It was mine.
Yes.
Or if I could, like, if I was sitting across from a person, I knew how they were feeling. But like if an emotion just came, I just assumed it was mine. Now I do the thing where I'm like, is this mine? Is this somebody else's? Is this the collective's? It can be very discombobulating sometimes.
I don't think I experience that, but I can imagine, because I can feel the, with my powers of empathy, I can understand, I can feel how discombobulating that must be.
I
don't think I do, or I think I'm quite, I don't think I'm high up. I do think I can feel other people's stuff, but it's not to the point. I don't think I feel it quite as strongly as you do. And again, all that comes with its own gift and challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just like anything.
Yeah. But and there are ways of, once you know that, there are ways of helping with that. There are ways of, be it protective lights, protective bubbles, be it constantly asking yourself that question, is this mine, or is it, whose is this? And visualizing giving it back, and all those things.
All the things. Yeah.
All the things. I wonder if I'm going to discover that about myself. I don't think I am. But it's a lifelong journey of learning.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So just remind me, is there anything else on that list that maybe we should touch on a little bit more? But I think we're going to talk about those things as we go along.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I think this is a really great place to end this just introduction to what we're doing, why we're doing it, and a bit of an intro into HSP. Do you think there's something? Do you think there's anything else would be a good idea to cover today?
I think we've hit on the basics. I think you said in the show notes we'll have links for people, so if they want to go find out more for themselves or for somebody they love, we'll have places they can go.
We'll link to the blog, the Highly Sensitive Refuge, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We'll link to that. We'll link to Julie's website, and there's a quiz on there. We'll link to Willow's website, and there's a quiz on there. The reason we talk about these people a lot, because they've been quite big on our journeys, and I met you. We met each other in Willow's coaching.
We did.
Group.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that, how we connected.
We didn't talk about that, how we connected, but maybe we can, I think that will come out in other episodes. And we talked about a little bit about that in your episode, but that's how we connected. And that's why we talk about these people, because they've been very instrumental in our journeys, and also bringing us together to doing this.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I'm just a firm believer that HSPs can benefit hugely from finding community. So, both Willow and Julie have communities and they have resources, and it helps so much just not to feel alone. So, go find those resources, reach out, keep knowing that you're not here by yourself. There's others of us.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we'd love to connect with you.
We absolutely would, because I would love, as part of this, if we build some sort of community, even no matter how small it is, that would be incredible, wouldn't it? So yes, I really, if anybody's listening to this and wants to get in touch with us, we absolutely mean please get in touch with us.
Yes.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows whether we have a community, what it looks like, but we can certainly have community around this podcast. So please do get in touch if you've got any questions. You know, we'll do our best. We will share whatever knowledge we have. I mean, you know, we're not experts, but we're living it. So that's why we're here talking about it. So we're definitely experts as far as our lived experience goes. I wouldn't say I've deep dived into all the academic stuff around it, because I just don't feel I need to or want to. I know what I know, and when I need to know more, I'll go and find something else. So so I think that's a good place to end. I think it is. So that's a good place to end for this first episode. We're going to release two. So this one's going to go out, and the next one will go out quite within a couple of days, to give you a couple of episodes to listen to while we get into our groove. And then we'll have one every week, unless something stops us. I don't know. You never know what's going to happen, but that's what we aim to do. We're going to bring you at least 6. I think we both Robbie and I know there's going to be more than 6. So not quite sure. Let's see how long we keep talking for.
That's right.
If you get in touch with us and send us subjects or ask us questions, then that will keep us going even more. So please do. We would love to hear from you. But for today, that's enough. So bye from me.
And bye from me.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. It helps others find us. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes and any suggestions you have for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to Robbie Lee, that's leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to safeandsupported.co.uk. See you next time.